Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Hey, welcome to this episode of the Note Closure Show. As always, Scott Carson jacked up with you today, and we've got a very special treat and a very special guest to help answer your questions. You guys know that on one of the most recent podcast episodes, we talked about the three-pronged approach to our focus on real estate investing in 2026 in the new year. One obviously being about the notes that we do, but he also had me talk about sub-twos, wraparounds, non-qualified assignment or assumptions that our good friend T. Allen Chesker calls it. And we've got a very special guest today who's very passionate about the wrap business. All right, the sub two business we can talk about there for you. He's a real estate investor and coach specializing in creative financing strategies. He's the founder of the Wrap Academy. We'll talk more about that later. He's helped dozens of investors learn how to transition from wholesaling to building sustainable buy and hold wealth through wraps, lease options, and seller financing. And his mission, always love it when people have a mission, is to empower entrepreneurs with the tools, strategies, and mindset to achieve financial freedom. Who am I talking about? I'm talking about the head honcho over at RapCat, Mr. Phil Louden. Phil, how you doing today, buddy?
Amazing. I love that intro.
Well, I'm available for birthdays and bar mitzvahs if you need one. You know what I
Perfect. Great.
mean? Now, Phil, you live in Central Texas now in Austin. We met
I
at
do.
Alan's event last month. But I've actually known you. I think we were already connected online, which was kind of funny before that. Where are you originally from?
I'm from all over. So I grew up in Virginia. I spent most of my 20s living overseas in Southeast Asia. I did a working holiday visa in Australia, stayed in Asia for a few years, moved to Kansas City, lived there for 5 years, and now I'm in Austin.
Just the traditional digital nomad, right?
Traditional. Yes, exactly. But
So,
I think it's interesting because that's where a lot of my ethos of business comes from is it's centered around lifestyle design
right.
because I care mostly about building a business that's not going to make me a slave, but that I'm is able to create freedom within my life. And that's like a big part of the ethos and what I stand for.
Well, but that's the great thing, and I love that you bring that up right off the bat because you took the words right out of my mouth with that aspect. There's so many people out there, entrepreneurs, business, people that want to get into real estate and want to get into investing, they're trapped. They feel like
Yeah.
they're trapped with the W-2, the 40-hour work week. They've been sold that lie of 40, 40, 40. They realize that the rat race is not for them, and they're looking for ways to get out of it. Uh, and I think one of the biggest things that drives people insane in a lot of cases is that first thing is that falsehood of believing they've got to have a lot of money to invest in real estate, right, Philip?
Yep, for sure.
Um, now, how did you get involved with you traveling all over the place? How did you kind of get your journey into becoming an investor?
Yeah, so I was a digital nomad for a few years, and I basically arrived to Southeast Asia with I didn't want to go home after I did a working holiday visa in Australia. I was probably 23, 24. And so I bought a $200 computer and started learning how to make money online. I didn't know how to do it, but I knew that people were doing it. And I looked at how most people in Richmond, Virginia, where I was going to college, were living their lives. And the 40-hour work week for a job, it didn't appeal to me at all. So I was kind of
Right.
set off to figure it out on my own. And I did a series of entrepreneurial endeavors from my computer in Southeast Asia. And then COVID hit, and I ended my last business, which was an e-commerce business. And I had some friends from I met in Thailand who were starting a real estate company in Kansas City. And they were like, "Hey, you want to come join?" And I was like, "Well, not really doing anything else. I'm 29. I'm ready to come back to the US." And so I moved, I hopped over to Kansas City and I started helping them build a wholesaling operation.
And so they're just wholesaling there in the KC area, or they do it nationwide, or
Just in Kansas City.
okay. And wholesaling definitely is a great way to get started and stuff like that. But I
Yeah,
also often feel like I do a lot of work to have to go and fish
it's a
every
lot of
day.
work.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, good. I'm glad you agree with it because I think wholesalers, you build great skills and talk with people and going like that. But like I said, you make a fee commission flipping it, and then you got to do the same thing all over again. What changed your mind to go more into the cash flow side or the owner financing, creative financing side?
Yeah, so we started building out this wholesaling operation, and we found our first deal, we found our second deal, we found our third deal. We hired mentors, they helped us build out a system, and we scaled it up to doing about 6 deals per month. And every single property, every single deal that we did was, I felt like I was at war because it was, it was
Yeah.
every single time is either the seller wants to back out last minute or there's title issues. Some guy had like 6 to 12 kids that he didn't pay child support for, and then we couldn't close because he refused to pay it. And then another guy had a water lien. He hadn't paid his water bill in 4 years somehow. And so there's like these things that just kept coming up. And every time that we're getting a deal closed, it just felt like we were at absolute war. And I just sit back and like think to myself, like, how do we make this scalable? How can we make this scalable? Because there's so many challenging issues that come up every single time. And simultaneously, we did that for a while, and every single month we were starting over from zero. So just kind of what I talked about, like building yourself a job and build. We didn't join a prison. We built our own prison, and
Yeah.
we had to call people nonstop. And as we grew the wholesaling business, our overhead grew. We're spending $20,000-$30,000 a month on staff and marketing, and so just to break even, we had to do 3 deals per month, and it was a lot. It was a lot of pressure, and at the end of the day, we weren't holding on to any assets. And so, we took a step back. It was like, there must be a better way. And it was during that time that we started learning how to lock up properties with creative financing. We actually locked up the property. We had a startup house in Kansas City that we locked. It was the first buy and hold. It was 4,000 square foot, 5 acres of land, pool, amazing house. $0 down. It's a very cool story. Um,
Yeah.
but then we locked up a second one that we wholesaled, and a third one, and we found a local mentor who's been doing this for a few decades in Kansas City. Where what he was doing was he was locking up properties with creative financing and then selling properties on seller financing to families that didn't qualify with the banks. A lot of these families were first generation Americans, entrepreneurs, 1099 employees. We were very grateful to have found him, like, very blessed to have found him. He would stay on the phone with us for hours at a time and really walk us through our first few deals. And on the first few deals, we were really scared to take down the properties because we never really held on to investments. We always just wholesaled them.
That's always, isn't that like always seems to be the biggest fear? Like, I don't want to own anything, but I want to be a real estate investor. I'm like, what? You know what I
You,
mean?
you just don't know what you don't know. When you're
Yeah.
going into anything new, you're going in blind. I mean, you have like the faith of what people have been telling you, but you're about to hold on to a property that you don't really know what to do with. I've never done anything with the property except for lived in one. And so, or wholesaled it.
Right.
Yeah, and so that was a step. But what we did was we just locked up the contracts like sub 2 contracts. And we did longer closing times, like 60 days, 70 days. And we found the buyer, the family we're going to sell our finance, and just double closed them. And we probably did that for the first 4 or 5 deals that we did.
And what was your average profit margins on those? Don't mind me
I mean,
asking.
we went from what would have been probably a $5,000, $7,000 wholesale, and those properties will profit us $150,000 plus over 7 years. We say 7 years because on average the families will sell or refinance in 7 years. So that's kind of like we want to see based off the law of averages what our profitability
Yeah.
will be. But if they go for 30 years, usually over 250,000 would be our profit.
Right.
One deal.
And that's one of the great things about being in the note business is that cash
Mhm.
flow aspect of it. What did you see on average? And I'm going to be, if you want to, you ain't got to give away your secret sauce. I don't want you to do
Mhm.
that, obviously. But when you see on the wrap side of things, what do you see with all the ones that you've worked through and your student stuff like that? What do you see is about the monthly average difference between the underlying mortgage payment and what they're able to wrap it at?
Yeah, so we want a minimum of $400 in cash flow. I mean, I love deals when it's 700, 850 in cash flow. Like those are my favorites. But I usually want to project like a minimum of 500, and that way, if I had to do a price drop because the property didn't move as quick as I wanted it to, I would still be netting that 400. We do have some properties that we've done in our portfolio that have been less than 400, but that's
Yeah.
usually ones that we had to fire sale. But usually 400, 500, I prefer to have them at 700, 800.
Now, the ones that the leads you're getting in from, are these distressed borrowers, probate deals, people that can't pay their mortgage, military? Where are you kind of seeing the different homeowners coming there becoming leads for you?
Yes, I mean our acquisitions path has been, you're talking about acquisitions, like where we
Yeah.
find yeah.
Yeah.
So our acquisitions path has been ever evolving. And I think that a really important thing for any entrepreneur or any investor is just be opportunistic because the markets are shifting. People always, I said this in the talk you saw me out with Alan Keshker. People always ask me like, how's the market? And I'm like, how's the market affecting your business? I'm like, it's really not because you just have to adapt and shift when things are
Yeah.
changing. So there's seasons where direct to seller works really well, and direct to seller has so many different components and niches
Yeah.
as well. You know, you can knock pre-foreclosures, you can be reaching out to list of stacked motivations, you can be texting high equity lists. You know, there's so many ways to go about doing it, and my goal is always to find the blue ocean. I'm looking to find the way to find leads that less people are doing, and there's more opportunity there. So I'm always seeking that. And that's why I love wraps and lease options because like there's this exit strategy is a blue ocean throughout the country right now. There's so much opportunity in this exit strategy because all these people that want to buy houses and the banks won't finance them. So we've done direct to seller, a lot direct to seller, especially coming from wholesaling. We've about 70 of these deals. So we've probably gotten about 15 by going to agents on market. Those are all creative financing deals on market. We bought a bunch from wholesalers. Now at this stage where I am with my business and investment company, I really focus on wholesalers. So I do a lot less direct to seller now, and I mostly focus on relationships and wholesaling because I enjoy relationships, and that's my favorite way of finding deals.
Well, it's also streamlined for you too, where they're bringing it to you. It's less overhead on
Mhm.
a deal by deal basis too, I imagine, huh?
Yeah, exactly. There's no overhead, and like the reality is that what we've figured out is like, and it's funny because could this wholesaler go into exactly what we're doing? If they knew the steps, yes. And now at this stage, you know, I have the knowledge where I've done this so many times that I just see the gold in deals where wholesalers don't see it. So I just work with them and they bring me the deals and they do all the legwork. They're following up with the sellers. They're talking to the sellers. They're checking in with them. They're dealing with the seller's traumas, which often occurs. And we just get to come in and be good buyers for them. And then
Right.
if you're a good buyer, like wholesalers will bring you deals very consistently.
What do you see as the average? Let's do a couple things here. Average wholesale fee that you're paying the
Mhm.
wholesalers on the deals.
I personally don't care what the wholesale fee is. Like sometimes it's 5,000, sometimes it's 3,000, sometimes it's 30,000. Like for me, that number means nothing as long as the deal is profitable.
There you go. As long as you're hitting your $500 a month
Yep.
target. And then on the opposite side, the marketing side of finding somebody to come in either as a tenant or as a lease option. Can't do those in Texas, obviously, but
Yep.
as a owner finance buyer, where you what are some of the things that you're doing to attract that? I think obviously it's probably having at least a 60 day option period to market the property or no.
So wait, what was the last question? The 60 day?
Basically on your on finding the end buyers to come in,
Yeah,
are you doing like a 60-day option period to market the property to find that, or are you doing most
yeah.
of it in 30 days, or how's that working
No,
for you?
we take down the properties now before we find the buyers.
Okay,
Like
okay.
at this stage, we've done it so many times that we know a deal is a deal. Like we know we're going to find a buyer within 60 days usually. Um, and so like how I set up our business in Kansas City is I automated that process. I trained someone to go and bring the buyers for us. So I trained a placer, a setter. Like someone's going to go and find that family, work with them, show them the property. And that's like to me, that is the end all be all. Like if you want to build a scalable business of like doing this type of deal, like having one of the sides automated is the best way.
Yeah,
I tell people all the time, like my role now is I'm a party planner.
yeah.
People, the property comes from a wholesaler who's usually a friend of mine. I will lock it up. I have the lender connections. I connect the lenders to the title company so I can acquire the property. I send someone through to clean it out and do the minimal rehab that's needed. And I have my guy bring the buyer in. Like one of the more recent deals I was doing, I was in Colombia, South America, and I was able to lock up a property from a wholesaler. He's actually was part of Rap Academy, one of our coaches actually. He brought the deal. I said, okay, great. I connected him with my lender. We locked it up. I cleaned it out. Amazing. And then I had my guy in Kansas City market for the buyer, brought the buyer, and that deal was going to make us over $200,000. And all I did was sit back and connected the pieces.
Right. Now, out of that 200,000, how much of that is a down payment as far as from the new buyer?
Not a whole lot. So this one we did, this was in Kansas City. So we did do a longer term lease option. So we got
Mhm.
10,000 as a down payment on that one.
Great. And then with your on your traditional owner finance stuff, especially here in Texas, what are you seeing as kind of the target percentage that you're looking for off of property value as far as a down payment?
It depends. Like this stuff's always an art, right? So like the goal of this business is, I mean, the goal of any business is to have a product market fit, right? So we want to have there's a give and take, and it's depending on, and all investors should always analyze their risk, right? So one, you should know like if this family were to default, what does that process look like? So if they were to go through foreclosure, how much would that cost me, and how long would that take, right? And in Texas, you guys have pretty quick foreclosures.
We had the fastest in the nation, buddy, 21 days. You know what I mean? And
So
then you being from Kansas City, you had the fast foreclosure process in Missouri, 90 days, and Kansas being 9 months. You know?
yeah. Yeah. So, and yeah, for us, how we structure in Kansas City is mostly evictions. So,
Yep.
yeah. So 21 days, amazing, right? So then you know that, you know, the cost, how much would it cost for you to do a foreclosure on somebody?
About 1,500 to 2,000 bucks.
So I mean, it's very similar to an eviction process
Yep.
in the Midwest. So with that, you know, you do have a little bit of flexibility on the down payment that you can receive. Like when you receive a down payment, that's good. That's their skin in the game.
Yep.
So that's in many ways, it's going to vet them as whether they're serious or not. If there's a lower down payment, then you're at a higher risk of having someone default. So this is all to me, it's just an equation in my head of risk analysis. So I prefer to move properties quicker. So I want to price it in a way that is marketable to our potential end buyers. Oftentimes I'd rather sell it for a higher sale price, and I'm okay to do a slightly lower down payment because I'd rather focus on the cash flow and then the note equity that we build.
It makes sense. Makes sense. Now you mentioned on the wholesalers bringing you, so you're actually buying the properties yourself and then owner financing that. Is that what
Yeah,
we're talking?
so we do a few different ways.
Yeah.
Um, So we do what we call the jacket strategy, which is when you wrap the burr. So we'll buy it hard money, renovate, refinance, and then we'll sell it on long-term lease options or seller financing. That's we came yeah, so we came across that because we couldn't find enough creative deals and we are trying to scale the model in Kansas City. And so we're like, there's got to be a different way. And then we figured out this way of doing it. And so that's one way that we structure it.
Okay. And where are you seeing that right now with the financing side, with the market being where they're at? You still see an opportunity in that Burr DSCR loan aspect of things with a
Yep.
wrap?
Yep, for sure. You get less interest rate arbitrage, but you get more equity. So you're basically replacing because when you do a sub two wrap, you're getting a lot more interest rate arbitrage ideally, and usually you're getting less equity unless you're going direct to seller and you have a very good deal. So for us with the jacket strategy, we're creating more equity. We're buying properties at 70 to 75% of their value, of ARV minus repairs,
Yep.
and then we're doing small renovations and we're creating a nice level of equity in there. So we're creating 50, 60,000 of equity.
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense because you got to buy it. Buy it at a discount, do a little bit of rehab, and then a DSCR will do 70, 75% in the highest, 80
They'll
and
do,
some.
yeah, they'll do 80. They'll do 80, but usually we're doing 75% rate and term, or sometimes we get cash out as well, which is an added bonus.
Yeah, that's always a nice added bonus to
Hmm.
walk away from a closing with cash. Now, on the ones that are you still doing where you're taking over the mortgage, a true sub two in a lot of cases, or not so much anymore?
I'm opportunistic, so whatever deal comes my way, I'll analyze it because both ways work.
Right, right. Now, are those numbers where somebody's maybe doesn't have a lot of equity, or they've got some equity, maybe not, but a higher interest rate? What is it all about the numbers? Same thing, cash flow wise or equity wise, when it comes to taking those over?
Yeah, so normally we have an underwriting tool that we built
Sure.
out for our students, and that's this is normally I would share my screen and like kind of show you our underwriting tool and walk you through it because everything's an equation. There's this give and take, you know.
Yeah.
So I have a deal right now in Kansas City. I just took down. It was 160,000. I think I paid $12,000 down. Barely needs any work. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it for I think 220, 240. So I'm building some nice equity in there, and that one should cash flow around 500 to 550.
Very nice.
Hmm.
Very nice.
And it was a
And then
5.5% interest rate.
5.5% interest to the end buyer.
No, no, no,
Wow.
no, no. No, that was we acquired it at 5.5%.
Okay, there we go. 5.5. Yeah. And that was to
Mhm.
be my next question. You like staying below 6% for the most part, or
For once again, like we do a lot of DSCR loans as well. So DSCR loans are typically 7%. And
right?
so right now at this point in time. So if it works, it works. You know, if the numbers make sense, the numbers make sense. I don't care what the interest rate is. Just like I don't care what the wholesale fee is. Like
Right.
if the interest rate is 8%, but we're getting huge equity in it, and then the numbers make sense, then it makes sense.
What do you find different here in Texas versus the KC market?
Yeah, so I mean, Texas is just a different beast because you guys are doing true wraps because you
Yeah.
don't have the options of doing any sort of lease options or contract for deeds. But I mean, you have the nice foreclosure process, which makes it like a lot less risky as well. But every market's a little bit different. I'm still getting, I just moved to Texas a few months ago, so I'm still getting more acquainted with the Texas market. And I have students that are in Texas and seeing how they're doing deals. Um, but I think it's just, you just have to find your sweet spot within each
Yeah,
market.
exactly. Speaking of sweet spot, is there, I mean, you mentioned your first property, 5 acres, big house, stuff
Mhm.
like 5,000 square foot. What do you see kind of being the best, um, best niche as far as price value wise, moving? Is it strictly in that first time home buyers market, like 250 and below in a lot of cases that myth moves, or is it higher?
Yeah, I like affordable housing. This is one of my biggest things. I always push affordable housing. I want to be in C-class neighborhoods, not in war zones. Find properties that are ideally below that 250 mark is amazing. Not all markets allow that.
Yeah,
But the profitability is going to be very similar if you're buying a more expensive house or a less expensive house. And oftentimes the holding times are higher on the more expensive
yeah.
houses and the debt servicing is higher. So your risk profile goes way up if you're doing a more expensive house because you have less buyers that are potentially interested in those properties and so on. And in our Rap Academy program, I just redid our entire course. I just relaunched it. I went through about 25 of our deals and I broke down because when we first started, we didn't really know. We learned our buy box through a trial and error. We would take down any sub two that we could find, and then we would go and wrap it. And every single one we were able to wrap. But some took longer to sell, and some were really easy to sell. We just found our bread and butter in that affordable housing zone.
Are you seeing more realtors being open to that as an exit strategy for their buyers by any chance, or any of your students seeing that more so?
For their buyers or for their sellers,
I'm sorry, for them themselves to help them move the property when the property's staying on the market.
like creative financing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's really cool to see the evolution because when I first started calling real estate agents, it was a new thing and no one knew what sub two was. And it was there's a barrier of entry there. We had to really walk them through the process. I had to get a few realtors that were friends of mine in my pocket so I can be like who understood creative financing so I can connect these realtors to them. You really had to condition them into it. And now there's a different issue where you have all these people that are calling realtors trying to buy properties with creative financing that they're burnt out and hearing about it because they have, Jimmy, who's like 16 years old in California, calling them like without knowing anything about real estate and trying to lock up
Uh-huh.
property sub two. And so then you have to like get through there. At this point in time, most realtors know about this, right? So they're aware of this. They've been offered this. So my first question to realtors now is, have you done a creative finance deal? And the answer is yes. Then you know that they understand the process and they're open to it. Now you just have to work together with them to structure in a way that makes sense for the seller.
What are some of the biggest sticking points that you see in the negotiations?
I mean, every negotiation is different. I think for realtors, I'm very relational. I'm very relation based. So for me, like I'm like, what does a realtor want? Right? The realtor has a property that's been sitting on market for 120 days. Like what they desire is they want to move that property and get paid. They have stale inventory. They probably have a seller that's upset, that's probably messaging them all the time, that like they have to do price drops, they're probably stubborn. So the realtor wants this property to move. This is a business to business transaction. I'm trying to transact with a realtor. We have a mutual goal of getting the seller a solution, right? So for me, I want to get on the same team as that realtor, break through whatever, barriers there are to break through. And usually now that's like they've been called by, Jimmy from California who's 16, and they've been called by Jimmy and all of his friends, and they're getting annoyed by all those phone calls. So you just have to break through that and create authority. Like, hey, we have a bunch of these properties. We've done this over and over again. I'm a super serious buyer, but like obviously the numbers have to make work. We have to make the numbers work. And I tell them straight up, I'm an investor as well. And so
Right.
break through those barriers, get on the same team as the realtor. And now we're just problem solving together and coming up with a creative deal structuring and a creative solution for the seller so that we can reach the mutual goal of getting the property sold. And that's where the fun is. For me, like I love deal structuring. I love puzzles. I love putting my brain and like all the knowledge I've learned about real estate and figuring out how we can structure this so the deal will make sense for me. Ideally, it'll be an easy single. Sometimes it can be a home run, and also will work for the seller.
That makes sense. And finding out probably what that seller's sticking point of motivation,
Mhm.
if they got to
For sure.
move, what they owe,
Yep.
if they're behind on taxes,
Yeah.
making sure the realtor gets paid because we
Yeah,
always know that's the
exactly.
first thing, right?
Exactly. And it's just like, hey, like, what's the story here? Like, what's going on? I see this property's been listed for 120 days and hasn't moved. Like, what's going on here? And then most of the time they'll tell you. And I just ask a lot of questions. I
Hmm.
once did. I had a mentor. He has he had one of the first like and largest masterminds in the country. It was just a general mastermind, and he had like Jeff Bezos, Bill Clinton, these types of people going to these events. And he noticed that like the richest people in the world, like Jeff Bezos, for example, one is they asked a ton of questions, and two, they never looked at their phone. And
Hmm.
so, which is cool because you think the richest person in the world would be like, always have urgent things to check. But he gave us a challenge, and the challenge was for 1 week of your life, have 80% of your talk time being asking questions. And that challenge, more than anything else, changed my life forever. I challenge whoever, if anyone's listening to this and feels called to that challenge, it will change your life forever. I ask a ton of questions. So the realtor gets on, I break through the barrier, and then I'm just sitting back and asking questions so I can really understand the situation. If I understand the situation that they're in, then we can start figuring out what the solution is.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing is uncovering that
Hmm.
motivation. What those
Yeah.
hot buttons are. Why are they trying to sell? Because listen, 120 days in the market, that's kind of normal these days in a
Yeah.
lot of places out there, right?
Which means
Um,
there's a lot of motivation.
there
'Cause
is
that
a
means
lot of motivation.
Because that
Do
means
you?
people are sitting, they're paying holding costs, or maybe they're not living in the property anymore. There's a reason they want to sell.
Yeah, exactly. They want to sell, and they want just to get where they ain't got to pay that mortgage payment on a monthly taxes and everything like that. But they're a little bit more open now to getting their profit in some other way than all one lump sum in a lot of cases, right?
Hmm.
Where do you see your terms with the buyers and so when you're not taking it down with a sub two with some equity? Are you paying off their equity over a period of time, or are you doing it in a lump sum? What's kind of the different ways you see things happening, Phil?
For the seller side, the buyer side.
If a seller is selling a house and you're taking it over sub two or doing creative, and they've got equity, and they say, "Well, how do I get paid my equity? Is it a lump sum or a payment over time? How are you kind of figuring that out for them?"
So many ways. There's so many ways to go about structuring this. So really,
What's your preferred way? What do
well,
you like?
it depends on their motivation as well.
That's
So
the magical answer. It always depends, and I love that because I say the same thing.
it's true.
It's like the what is it? The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. What's the answer?
Yeah.
42. But do you like paying it out? Do you like if lump sums over a period of time? What are some of your favorite
I
things?
like to, I mean, if I can get a 0% interest loan, I'll usually choose that method. So if I can, if they, and one of the things that we love working with sellers on is like, we're a purpose-driven company,
Right.
our company's ethos is we're helping families gain access to homeownership who aren't usually able to qualify with the banks. So I use that with the sellers, like, hey, like this is what your property be going towards. I know you could probably sell, I know you have some equity, but like if you work with us, like you're not only will you make more than you're making if you sell it traditionally, you would also like be contributing to a property that another family can gain access to homeownership through. And so we've used that a lot to enroll people in that vision. And oftentimes they'll give us nice terms because they know the property is going to a good purpose.
Yeah,
Um,
versus Blackstone buying a bunch or something like that.
exactly. Really. And so yeah, so that's one ways we structure. We do hybrid deals. I usually don't do lump sums. Like I don't like to do balloons. I don't like to do any lump sums. So ideally, like a sub two with the seller finance in there that we pay off over time and we're still able to cash flow is one of the ways we've done it the most. We've done versions of the stack method before where say families have 50% that they're willing to seller finance, or I'm sorry, the seller has 50% they're willing to seller finance. I used to face this a lot when I was beginning wholesaling. I didn't know what to do with it. But now we learned, you can get them to finance you that 50% and then use a DSCR loan to cover the other 50% and then put them together and structure that in a way that still works and makes sense. And that way, a lot of people I just got a property in Bedford where I got a sub two at 100 and 230,000 and then 0% interest at 170,000. That's
That's
like,
nice.
it's a
That's
great
like
deal.
Christmas. It's like Santa Claus every day, right?
Yeah, it's a great deal because then my debt pay down is so nice every single month.
Oh my God, you're building, and that's the thing, that's the thing that there's really three different ways to make money. Not only you making the monthly pay down,
Mhm.
or the down payment, the difference in cash flow, and then the principal reduction over time,
Yep.
and the appreciation in a lot of cases.
Yep.
Um, and with your owner financing stuff, especially here in Texas, this is more focused Texas. Is there you're doing 30-year mortgages on this stuff, 40-year? Are you
Yeah,
getting
30
anybody asking
years.
for 50 years yet?
Here's like a lot of our families are first generation Americans. I would say like maybe 70-ish
Yeah.
percent. I don't know the exact number. And a lot of them are Latino as well. A lot of the Latinos, how they operate is they'll multiply the monthly payment
Yeah.
by the number of years. They're like, why? And it's like it's PITI also. Like, why am I paying $2 million for this house? Like, well, there's taxes and insurance and interest. So I found that the 40-year mortgages don't really work. So we stick to 30 years.
Well, I always find too that the Latinos you'll have two, three families living and they'll pay the house down. They'll pay down
Mhm.
the mortgage first more than anything else to get that paid down
Yep.
in a lot of cases because they pride in the house. Same thing with their vehicles. They pay off their vehicles, they pay off their house
Yep.
first and foremost in a lot of cases. And there's often two families doing it, which is great. Um, one thing being here in Austin, I don't know if you saw that the state of Texas just passed new eviction laws. Yeah, here
I'm
in
not
this,
saying this.
huh?
Tell me about it.
So it used to be if you're going to evict somebody here, you had to place it firmly on the door and stuff like that. You couldn't place it under the door or a side thing now, but now they've said, well, as long as it's placed somewhere, it works. Because it used to be if you didn't place it where it was on the front door, you place it somewhere else, your eviction would get kicked out, and you have to go back and do the whole thing of it. But they just passed new laws as of January 1st on the new eviction side. So it makes it easier for us as investors to evict people, especially if you end up with squatters in the house, stuff
Nice.
like that.
Amazing.
That takes me to another thing. Have you ever run into where you've got a motivated seller and there's a squatter in the property that you got to get rid of?
I haven't personally done many of those deals. It's a little bit too messy for me. At this stage in my investment journey, I probably would because I have the eviction attorneys I like to work with.
Yeah,
So I'd be fine with doing it. Once again, you just have to know the cost and like the risk. Like if there's a squatter, you're probably not getting inside the property, so there's more opportunity for there to be bigger repairs you're not aware of. And so if the deal works, if you get enough of a discount, it has to be worth it for me to buy it.
sure, of course. That makes a lot of sense. And that takes me to the next spot. Are you looking for full rehabs from some of the wholesalers out there that might be listening, or you like more like quick lipstick on a pig kind of thing?
Lipstick. We've gone
Keep it simple, baby, right?
simple, yeah, simplicity. Once again, like I'm building a life that's like as free as possible,
Yeah.
limits my stress. We've done a lot of the full rehabs when we are doing more volume, and it's just more to manage. So I prefer like why do that when I can get a property that I just need to put some lipstick on and make it work.
Now, you have properties all across the country, or primarily in Kansas City and Texas areas, or where's your kind of
Yeah,
your
Kansas,
portfolio?
Kansas City and Texas.
Great markets, great markets.
Hmm.
Love those two. Definitely bought a lot. I bought a lot of debt in those two markets. Definitely got to know Kansas City quite well, and then even
Hmm.
Columbia and St. Louis, and bought a whole lot of stuff in that neck of the woods. What's the best way for our listeners out there that want to find more information about you and your Rap Academy, and maybe take a second to tell folks what's in the Rap Academy and what you're doing for folks out there that want to dive into this?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, our main focus with Rap Academy is that we do a few things. Like one is we take investors who have shiny object syndrome and say, hey, focus on this one thing and do it over and over again until you have $10,000 at least a month in cash flow, right? Because so many people think that they have to do a million different
Yeah,
things to like create financial freedom, and it's not real. So we help them to get really, really focused, identify what market they want to do these deals in. Some people do local markets, some do virtual markets, and then we just guide them through every step of the way so that they can do these deals and do it repeatedly over time. Because you do something one time and you're in the unknown, right? You don't know what you're doing. You do it twice, you feel a little more comfortable. You do it three times, and now you're starting to get catch a groove. So we gather people, we bring them together to focus on this exit strategy. Because to me, doing wraps and doing seller finance deals is the best exit strategy there is in single family real estate. It's also the most passive, and it's also one of the most profitable, especially if you compare like profitability to headaches. It has minimal headaches, maximum profitability. Um, so we bring people in. We have multiple coaches. We have four coaching calls every single week. People get direct access to myself. We have about 55 members in the community. They all share knowledge, share resources. We're all very focused on the exit strategy of seller financing. And we have wholesalers who bring deals. We have a lot of really smart people together. So that's the whole like ecosystem of what we're creating.
now with the owner financing in Texas changing things up a little bit. I don't know if you've heard that, or I know I'm looking forward to Nirvana speaking this too. She was on a podcast
Mhm.
talking about that. If you're doing more than three, you've got to go out and become a mortgage loan officer for doing more than 3 a year. How are you kind of working your way with that? Are you looking to do that yourself? Are you hiring somebody to do that in house for you, or how's that working?
Yeah, so it's a shifting landscape. So for me, like m most of my portfolio is in Kansas City. So I'll continue buying in Kansas City and then in Texas, make that decision if that's worthwhile. You know,
Sure.
like if that part of the process is going to be worthwhile.
Yeah, yeah, no, I get that. I was actually speaking to her yesterday and talking about how they're looking for folks. She's looking for a couple folks to just get licensed, just to hang their license with her, just to handle the seller financing side here in Texas, which is kind of something interesting to think about. One thing I would like to ask is, I know that folks probably think about that when you're, and you mentioned this is kind of turnkey. You already got the system in place for somebody to go out and find your end buyers and the owner finance side of things. If
Yep.
somebody was starting off trying to find if there's a market for that in the area, what are a couple of things that they could do? Would it be like posting something on Craigslist or posting a bandit sign, or what do you see as kind of the easy way to start getting feelers of folks that are looking for creative financing for them to buy a house?
Oh yeah, we have some secret sauce in this area. If I can share, so I can share some of it's my secret sauce, but like at the same time, like just reverse engineering, like searching for people that are selling properties in the area in this kind of way. So that's a really good starting point. Just like searching through Facebook, seeing if you can find people selling on seller financing, and like how I learn is I just talk to people. And I'll just for example, Nick Legamario was he was one of the speakers on the panel with us, and for Alan Keshker's event. And I actually reached out to Nick several years ago when I was growing my portfolio, and I just randomly reached out to him. I hopped on the call with him several times for like an hour or two. He was willing to talk to me. It was awesome. I was
Yeah.
asking him a ton of questions. So I do that a lot. I do a lot of that research of just talking to people, asking a lot of questions. Again, ask a lot of questions, and you'll start to put the pieces together of what's happening in the market and find the big players.
Yeah, and that's the big thing is getting out and networking. I mean, it's
Mhm.
January is where this is episode being recorded. Getting out and networking your local real estate clubs, your networking events, stuff like that. Find out what people are who are successful, and then paying attention when you're driving across town. You see a flyer or a bandit sign, somebody's offering that.
Mhm.
That might be a good spot, or take a
Yep.
picture or to copy it with a different number, but just avoid the
Mhm.
zoning people or the code enforcement liens.
Yeah, for sure.
Once again, Nick, I'm sorry, not Nick. You just mentioned Nick there. Philip, what's the best way for our listeners to reach out to you, to connect with you, and follow up with you?
Yeah, I'm on all the things. So Facebook's a great place. Philip Louden on Facebook. You can find my YouTube, Philip Louden, the Rap Academy. We do have multiple schools. You can find that through my Facebook as well. You can reach out to me directly on Facebook. We do master classes periodically where we just like walk through more in depth, like what exactly we're doing with this model. And the goal with that is to take everything I've learned in the past 5 years, consolidate it down to 1 hour, and just teach people like this is why we love this strategy, and this is exactly like what we're doing.
Well, the great thing that I love about what you're doing is it's still, we were doing this back 25 years ago when the rates were at 7, 8% was a good interest rate. Now people look at that and they're like, oh, it's a horrible rate. I mean, we got
Mhm.
rate spoiled, but there's a lot of stuff out there. I just had a call with a mortgage broker yesterday who talked about how he's seen a wave of refinances where people are refinancing at that 2, 3, 4% interest rate because they can't afford to stay in the house. They need to tap into their equity. So they're glad to
Wow.
take a 7% interest rate because they need the capital of the equity. So a lot
Wow.
of distressed borrowers out there, distressed people out there. So this is a great way of making a whole lot of lemonade out of some lemons for other people, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Well, Phil, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your insight. I look forward to seeing you next week as well, buddy.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for having me.
No problem. All right, guys and gals, definitely want to check it out. Rapacademy.net for his next masterclass. It's about an hour long, definitely worth it. And then if that's something you feel like doing, you got a guy who's doing this for people all across the country, helping them hold their hands in making financial independence come true for them. So if you feel like you're trapped, you are not trapped. You just got to stay consistent and honestly don't try to do 12 different things at once. Like he said, I believe that you can only really truly focus on one or two things.
Yep.
And this is one of the few things you should be focused on in 2026 because it's an ideal time, ideal opportunities, and so many amazing deals to be had.